So back in 2021, I sold my business for millions. And on paper, it looked like a dream. But the truth is, I felt like an imposter. Everything happened so fast. In under 8 months, we pivoted our business model and scaled from a few $100,000 of revenue to over 70 million. It was a massive win, but instead of feeling free, I still felt the pressure to prove that it wasn't a lucky shot. So I did what a lot of founders do. I doubled down. I became a serial entrepreneur. I took on bigger problems, more responsibility, more risk. And by late 2023, I was overextended. In fact, I was in full fear mode, hustling to save one of my most promising technology company after a major setback pushed us into the failure zone. It had been a rough 6 months of restructuring, but it felt like the wind had finally started to turn. So I was heads down, eyes on my laptops, when the phone rang. It was one of my former partners from the business I'd sold. He'd stayed on to manage the business, including a warehouse full of products that, once they sold, I'd collect most of my payout. So I let myself hope. Maybe this is the good news call. Maybe the inventory is sold and I'm about to collect most of my exit money. But that's not what happened. Phil, I've got bad news. The warehouse burned. The stock is gone. It hadn't been insured. Just like that, my world shifted. I was already deep in the shadows of entrepreneurship, but that call snapped me. I crashed into depression. I couldn't react anymore because I was done, broken. But in that loss, I gained something more precious. Permission. Permission to let the world burn for a while. Because as founders, we act like we have to fight every fire. And we call that grit. But grit is more than blind perseverance. It requires understanding which fire is worth fighting for and to begin with. Because the rest is noise. But growth shouts, and intuition whispers. So it's hard to know what's important. But with growth and flames around me, I could finally hear the whisper. And it commanded me to do one thing. Drop everything and just be a father. Not a father trying to win Father of the Year like I used to chase, but a father right now, in this moment. On that day, that was the signal, and it saved me. So I took my 3 kids, who were 3, 5, and 7 years old at the time, to Cancun, just us. I was barely holding it together, but I'll never forget this trip because it became my anchor, a place of identity safety, away from my ventures from which I could recover. And from that anchor, I rebuilt. I looked for the root causes of my wins and my failures because I had to understand. I didn't want what happened to me to happen again, not to me, to my partners, the founders I advise, and frankly, not to my son, who now wants to be an entrepreneur like his dad. So I looked for these root causes, and what I discovered is that the main reason startups fail has way less to do with business or market problems and way more to do with the inner journey of entrepreneurship we were never prepared for. And here's why I think it matters right now. Every year, millions of founders step into the founder arena, and in the US, 5.2 million founders, in fact, have created new business applications in 2025, and most will fail. But what's more important is why, because the root cause is a human issue more than a founder issue, and that's proven by data. In fact, in one recent survey of over 400 plus startup founders, 72% said the pressure of entrepreneurship had a negative impact on their health. And what's worse is that 81% of them never talk about it, so it just goes under the radar. That's not a personal problem, it's a systemic one. So we have to stop obsessing only over business performance and start looking under the hood at founder performance. So that's what I did. And when I lifted that hood, what I discovered wasn't in any business textbook. Because entrepreneurship is more than one game. Sure, there's the business game with product, strategy, and markets, but we have a lot of options to help us with that. And meanwhile, there's the founder journey, that inner world that pulls the strings of our decisions. But the problem is the founder journey mostly happens outside our comfort zone. So it's full of noise from pressure we don't really understand. And that's what pulls us into what I call the shadow of entrepreneurship. 3 emotions that keeps visiting every founder, amplifying the noise and making us reactive to it. Uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness. Uncertainty says, I have to decide now. Fear says, I have to act before it's too late. And unworthiness says, I have to prove that I'm enough. Each of these emotions offers relief through reaction. But that's the trap, because the relief feels like progress, but it's not, it's noise. And the problem isn't that these emotions exist. Every founder will feel them, and there's no exoneration from them. The problem is when we don't see them, because then they run the show. And when the shadow runs the show, decision quality collapses, and the pressure doesn't stay inside one person. Rewind to April 2023. I came back from a business trip with 2 things. On one hand, a signed letter of intent worth hundreds of millions. And on the other, dozens of leads asking for samples. I thought this was the biggest moment of my career, the moment of confirmation that I wasn't an imposter. I thought I've cracked it. I can do this again and again, build companies that matter and teach others so the impact could ripple. But instead of taking off, everything stopped. My partners, the brains behind our technology and patent, burnt out and quit. So the lab went dark, customers moved on, and all that hope disappeared. Now, on paper, this makes no sense. But when we understand the shadow, it makes perfect sense. For over a year, our uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness have been chipping away at our mental health and resilience. So by the time we finally pivoted to what looked like a very strong product market fit, my partners were drained. So I should have been paid more attention to their shadow. We should have been more open about it, but it was too little, too late. And when they broke, the pressure transferred back to me. So when I got the call about the warehouse fire, I was already full of cracks myself, ready to break. Now, what surprised me the most is that it wasn't a weakness that broke us, but our strength. It was our capacity to push through that pressure, because pressure never disappears. It cascades to your stakeholders, your partners, your employees, your investors, but also your loved ones. And people start carrying pressure that they don't know how to hold, so they react to it in their own way through their shadow. Some withdraw, some burn out, some fight, and some quit. But the pressure never disappears. Now, it multiplies back to the founder, because when our stakeholders quit, they rip away everything, from what they do to what they represent. When my partners left me, they didn't just take away their day-to-day work with them. They took our potential innovation pipeline, the credibility they would bring to investors and customer meeting, many other forms of conceptual stability and hope that their presence brought. Because our stakeholders represent more to us than the work they do. And when they break, it's no longer an incremental increase of pressure, but an exponential one, which makes it very hard to see our own breaking point. And if the cascades keep going, then the founder break. And when the founders break, businesses follow. So the future we choose, especially in entrepreneurship, especially in leadership, is not a future where pressure disappears, because that's not possible. The shadow will visit every founder, every leader, every team building something meaningful. The question is whether we keep doing what hustle culture trained us to do and react to every fire until the system breaks, or if we build an inner operating system that can hold under pressure So the cascade stops before it begins. If I could go back, I wouldn't tell my younger self to be tougher. I was already tough. I would tell him 3 simple things: calm, clarify, and commit. So first, calm. You can't think your way out of the shadow. You have to regulate yourself first. So breathe, find your anchors, and give yourself permission to let the world burn for a while. Because what you will find is that in the ashes of fake urgency hides what truly requires your attention. Second, clarify. Keep your finger on the pulse, name the shadow, pull it out of your key stakeholders regularly, and challenge its story. Because if the shadow says, you're about to lose everything, is that true, or is it just loud? Third, commit. If a decision is required, only commit to quality decision and stay true to them when the shadow tempts you with relief through change. Because remember that the shadow always tempts you with promises of growth and relief if you react to it. But it's an empty lottery ticket that would cost you your success and your health. So when growth shouts, trust the whisper. Let's choose a future where our inner operating system holds so that you don't break and your business doesn't follow. Thank you.